what's up, you guys? It's your Drive Home Podcast. I'm your Drive Home Podcast host, Ryan. Here with another one. Oh, man, am I recording? Yes, I am. Okay, good. Yeah, here with another one for you guys. I'm a little out of sorts here. I got a guest coming on here. And, like, they're actually waiting for me. And I'm surprised. Wasn't ready. Didn't have this going. Didn't have that going. So, yeah, hope you guys are driving safe. Hope you guys are being safe. All that stuff. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the show if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify. And let's go ahead and start this thing here. I think there we go.
Can you hear me?
I can. You're a little quiet, but I can turn you up.
I cannot hear you.
I'm probably really loud.
Yeah, I'm plugged in. I can hear me.
Weird. Hold on. Okay. Yeah, so I can hear her. I can hear myself. She can't hear me. So weird. Well, this never works out. This never works smoothly. Never has, never will. I talked about this on here about how it's really just damn near impossible to get it to work because it's either someone on either end always has something not routed right or not selected. So I don't know. She may have her audio muted, but she hears herself. I don't know. Everything looks ship-shape on my end. Let's see. While she's getting that together, what else is there to talk about? Man, a lot's been going on with me. Geez. Pretty funny story I'll tell real quick. I had a fly that was flying around my house, and it was driving me insane. And this thing was, it knew how good it had it in my house. It wasn't going anywhere. It was just hanging around. I like normally I can open like a window or something, and a fly will attempt to like, they'll go towards the screen thinking they can get out somehow, and then I'll just trap it in there and let it fry in the sun. I don't care, whatever. And then that's how I get rid of them. But this guy, he wasn't falling for any of those tricks. He wasn't doing it, man. He knew how good he had it, man. He had and I don't really have any food laying out or anything. I don't know where. Well, okay, so then I go into the bathroom. This is kind of gross. I'm sorry, Michaela, for this being on your episode, but I go into the bathroom, and it was just hanging out in the bathroom. So gross. So that just grossed me out to the point where I thought about it all day that day at work. And I'm like, I gotta come home and I gotta do something about this. So I cleaned my bathroom as soon as I got home. It just icked me out so bad. Oh God. I cleaned my bathroom, shower, scrubbed it down and everything. And then I get in the shower later that night, and for some reason, normally I turn the shower on and then I get in, but this time I get in and then I turn the shower on. Right when I did that, this fly that's been hanging in my house for weeks starts going crazy. I'm like, I gotcha. So I grabbed the water hose and I just spray it until that thing went down the drain. And let me tell you, that thing fought the good fight. It went a couple rounds. It was it was just swirling and swirling. I think it was like on top of the water. I'm like, come on, man. So I eventually had to put put it on like power wash mode. Just straight up, just right down the drain, and it finally drowned. Finally got rid of that fly, man. I hate flies. Them things are nasty. Ugh. Anyways, it looks like Michaela is having some technical difficulties. She messaged in the chat that she had an issue like this before last week where she couldn't hear the person. It was very quiet. So she's got her husband helping her right now.
Brand of computer.
It looks like I hear her talking again. I don't know if she can hear me.
Oh, sorry. No.
But I have my video turned off in the meantime.
Yeah, so it sees.
So let me see. What other stories can I tell while I'm waiting? Oh man, I finally got a new windshield. My windshield's been cracked for like
You can't?
No.
2 years.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Alright, here's what we're gonna do.
Finally fixed that. That I went to Safe Light. So funny, you go to Safe Light. The commercial shows them delivering a windshield to someone in the desert, but they can't come to my home in suburban Cleveland. Like what? So I had to go to them. They said, "Oh, it's gonna be like a 3-hour job."
Yeah,
Ended up being like an hour, whatever.
You can't hear him.
So that was fun. Did that. So anyways, yeah, I got that fixed, new windshield, and I got some new tires, so it's like looking like a new car. It's nice. Anyways, yeah, my washing machine was going crazy just now.
I wonder what's
Bouncing all over the place. I had to sometimes if I have a lot of weight in there in the wash and it's not distributed properly throughout it's one of those old spin washers. It's been here probably the life of the house. And if I don't have that properly proportioned,
Here, can you talk in your mic? Oh,
it will
right your microphone
it will start going doom 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 back and forth, rocking. So I almost gotta stop it, rearrange the linens in there, and let it resume and move things around until it does a nice. I don't hear it
using WebEx
going crazy right now.
So we're gonna go those. You hear anything?
So yeah, sounds like they're getting it together over there.
Yeah.
Probably should have muted their mic, but guess I could do this. Just pull that down. So yeah, I got so many episodes, man, that I need to work on. So many episodes that I have done that I just need to put out. I never thought I would have. It's a good problem to have. I never thought I'd have this problem where I have too much content to put out. But I did post a reel. I finally posted the episode of my band from months ago. Did a reel. I like invited everyone that was here as a collaborator, and like only one person accepted it. Whatever. Some people I think are getting a little too obsessed with their brand, whatever people want to call it, their brand. They'll look at your product and go, "Oh, yeah, I don't want to be associated." I've had some people on the show, returning guests on the show before that have denied collaborations on Instagram. They just see, yeah, I know they saw it, and they just go, whatever. Whatever. I mean, I get it. Some people want their Instagram page to have a certain aesthetic to it. But it's like, dude, well, whatever. Like, you came on my show, at least help me out, Like, you don't want this on your profile. Maybe I don't want your shit on my profile, whatever. I might actually remove something that I saw. Someone tagged me and I was like, it wasn't that great. Why is it on my Instagram? It's not great. Feelings mutual. No offense. Hey, listen, I like all my guests to come on here, but it's like, if you can't help each other out, what are we doing? You know what I mean? Like, So and that's why I have, you know, my friend Michaela coming on here. So this is just the thing to do. Kind of help each other out, go on each other's podcasts, and it looks like they're getting it together slowly but surely. I forgot I have the audio down, so I don't know if they were talking. Crap.
I heard something. I hear that.
You hear me?
I hear you. Do you hear me?
There we go.
Yes.
Oh my god.
It was a setting in the program, not the
It
computer.
was a setting in the program. This is my first time using it, so I take full responsibility, and I will pay you
Oh.
for this half hour wasted.
So let's save that. All right, you're all set.
Oh my god, thank you. Oh my gosh, don't we love it good? Let me get back on. Oh my gosh, don't we love technology?
Isn't it great? Yeah, I should have warned. You know, I should have warned you earlier about
No,
this
it's fine.
program. It is a little tricky. It's not so plug and play.
No, it was
Like-
fine. I had an interview with someone on Google Meet because I'm switching over from Zoom to Google Meet,
Oh, okay.
and I could hear her, she couldn't hear me.
Ugh.
And so then we went to Zoom, and then she ended up just calling me on my phone, and we just interviewed on
Oh my
speakerphone.
gosh. Well, that's what I was actually saying. If you had your phone, you could just connect AirPods, and I've done that with people, and it actually sounds pretty good. The microphones on those are incredible. But
Maybe I should get some after this as a backup because I don't.
it's a good
Gosh.
quick fix. Yeah, because this WebEx Meet, I love it because my work uses it. It's really
Okay.
good. It's powered by Cisco, which is like apparently a huge tech company.
Okay.
It's even better than Zoom. There's a lot more,
Okay.
you know, it's way more versatile and I just like it. And I pay monthly for it, you know,
Yeah.
because I just hate doing the hang up after 45 minutes and coming back. I was doing that a bunch of times, but anyways, yeah, I got
Hi.
hi. We got
Long
Michaela,
time no see.
my friend Michaela on. It's been a long time coming. I know we had a couple times we were unable to do this, but we finally landed on a day where we could do this. I'm trying to get this so it's like I'm not looking.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not
fine.
bad. Okay, and yeah, so thank you for being here. Yeah, I get all the trials and tribulations of podcasting all too well. It can be a bear.
It's a fun world.
It is, yeah, and yeah, thanks for being here. I gotta say, you're probably one of the first. So you have a show.
I do.
Your story matters,
Yes.
and then you started on a show called "Don't Worry, You're Enough." It was a podcast you and your friend Diane
Yes.
did for a few years during what was that, during the pandemic, or
I think that was, yes.
like started around that same time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because this is my 2025 will be my third year of Your Story Matters.
Yeah.
So 5 minus 3 is 22. So yeah, we did it from like June of 20 to December of 2021.
Yeah, I was just seeing. Yeah, I was looking to see when the last episode you did. It was like June of 2021. Oh, I can't believe it was that long ago. But
Where has time gone?
I know it's crazy. And now you've been doing your current podcast for ever since then. You took a little break,
Yep.
a little hiatus
No,
in
I
between.
actually jumped right back in.
Oh, did you?
We debated on like, okay, does the podcast end? Because she was gonna go back into the singing world, and I'm like, I'm not done yet. I have like been transformed, right? And so I wanted to keep going, and the discussion was, okay, do I keep the name and just do it solo? But she was like, you do whatever you want, run with it.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what? I want to let Don't Worry You're Enough live with Diane and me, and so I'm going to start my own thing.
Yeah.
And Your Story Matters was the title that I just stuck with, and so I
That's awesome.
continue to never look back.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love it. I've listened to a little bit of both. Definitely more of when you guys first did your duo podcast. That was when like podcasting was getting huge during the pandemic, and
And we had no idea what we were doing. Like, if you even
Oh.
want to listen, like, don't listen to the beginning episodes because we were like very scripted.
yeah,
It was awkward interviewee things, and then towards the end, I would say listen to like the latter half of those episodes, because that's
Yeah.
when we were very much just conversational. We didn't have a topic. We just started recording and going. And so
Yeah.
just the transformation in a year and a half, both of us never having done this before,
Right.
it speaks for itself. So yeah, just
Right.
listen to the latter half of those.
No, I think that's great. I love that's how it should be. It should start off slow and see it evolve. I love the evolution of it all. I love mine. Your drive home, I just started literally talking into my phone while driving home, and it was terrible. But it was a start, and I think it was Anchor FM at the time, and then they changed to Spotify.
Yes.
It's changed so many different times, but it made it so easy for anyone to do. It was like amazing. I was amazed. So yeah, you guys were definitely one of my first inspirations to do this because, when I saw, you look at it as a whole and you're like, man, like it looks so hard. But like then I'm thinking like I have a whole studio. I'm basically using my recording equipment anyways. I went to audio engineering school, so I could do this. And then like next thing you know, I've been doing this about 2 years now, so it's crazy. Yeah, time just flies. It really
Isn't that
does.
nuts?
Yeah, yeah. I never
And
thought.
think about it, with so much that happened during COVID, right? Like COVID's the great equalizer in all of our lives, because we all had life before COVID and now we have life after COVID. And so I
Right.
think all of us just had stuff that we wanted to say.
Yeah. Oh, for
And it was
sure.
a great renaissance of the arts and creativity. So many people I know are now doing creative things,
Mm.
myself and yourself included. We've been in this kind of world, we just haven't done this particular medium.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I love it because I'm my own boss.
Yeah.
No one tells me what to do, right?
Right.
Like I just do my thing and go. And so it's been very freeing
Yeah.
for me. And yeah, just recording on your phone is the easiest place to start. And people are always like, oh my God, what do you talk about? I'm like, anything you want to.
Anything. Yep.
Anything. Like you get more tailored as you figure out like what's my vibe in terms of topics or kind of what I want to be known for.
Yeah.
And then you never run out of stuff to say.
Yeah.
You're amazed by how much you actually have to stop recording, because
Oh.
then your episodes would be 5
Oh,
hours long.
for sure. Yeah. And you do like I've seen you do like series. It won't just be like a different topic every episode. It'll be like you were doing like a series on the same thing for a few,
Yes.
which is a good idea. I want to start doing stuff like that instead of having a different interview after interview after interview. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's nice to have a topic and go with it for like a few. So how often are you like posting like and also are you just audio only or do you always
I'm audio only for now.
yeah.
And I used to record through Zoom. Now I switched to Riverside. Big thumbs up for Riverside.
Really?
Really, really like it. And so, um, being a one woman show, I do everything. And so my show comes out twice a month, every other Wednesday.
Yeah.
And then I kind of have a newsletter that supplements some of that content. And I have stories on my newsletter that I don't share via podcast. So I'm always making sure that something's coming out.
Hmm.
But yeah, twice a month is like what I can do right now,
Yeah.
because and I do a breakdown of solo episodes versus interviews. And so last year I did 2 Enneagram series, one in the spring, one in the fall. Because after COVID, I became certified as an Enneagram coach. It's like, great, let's have people talk about it. People get different perspectives. Because hearing me say the same old thing all the time is just boring. And I know that because I wouldn't want to listen to me. And so then this year, because the podcast is called Your Story Matters, I broke the year into 3 parts: beginnings, middles, and endings. So my podcast just finished up the middle section and we're heading into the endings. And the solo episodes and guest episodes are just about people who have walked through different stages of beginning, middles, and endings, what it looked like, how they changed the narrative, how it impacted their story for better or for worse. But really just tying into the theme of storytelling and knowing that there's nuances, because every beginning has an ending, every middle has a beginning, every ending has a beginning. But just focusing on what was the problem, how did we kind of tackle it, what changed, and how did you change? And so
Yeah.
that so far has been very impactful and fun. And then my theme next year is just tell your story.
Yeah.
So I think I'm a big fan of themes that kind of helps with content
Mm-hmm.
in the brain. So I don't know, pick a topic, pick a phrase, pick a something, and then you can just run with it, and you
Yeah.
never run out of stuff either.
Yeah.
That's been helpful.
That's awesome. Yeah, so yours is very inspirational based. Um, very different. This is almost like a multiverse thing here because mine is not. Mine is very mine is very lame brain. I have a lot of men on this show, so anytime I can have a female personality, I will take it because
Yes.
it can be really barbaric and dumb sometimes. I mean, a lot of my inspiration. So I grew up like being kind of like a radio nerd and listening to like, you know, not like the Howard Stern so much, but more like just like, oh geez, I don't know, just local people here in Cleveland. And where are you at right now? I
I'm
know
in Medina.
you're in where, I'm sorry?
Medina.
Medina. Okay, all right, so not too far away. I wasn't sure where you moved to. So yeah, I just grew up listening to a lot of radio, talk radio and stuff. Even AM radio. And I think a lot of that is what also inspired me to do this. So it's almost a little more radio show like on here. Sometimes we'll play games on here. I mean, it gets really crazy. We started the show. I technically have a co-host. He's not here all the time. We would start the show. We would have some cocktails, and from there, it would just go left field. It would fall apart. But
I had a protein shake before this, so I don't know.
Oh, there you go.
It's a healthier cocktail.
That'll do it. That'll do it.
But I'm
No,
ready. Let's go.
no, not all of these are like that. Not all of these are like that. Some of them I want them to be a little more intellectual, and I've had people from Instagram that I've met on here. People on there's a guy. He's a worship pastor. I talk about church stuff a lot on here, so he's a worship pastor out in DeBerry, Texas, and I met him on a gear group on Facebook. So it was like really weird how you meet these people from like random places, and next thing you know, you're doing podcasts with them. And it's just crazy. I like this. Like I was saying when you were kind of getting things together just now. I like hopping on different podcasts and promoting each other and collabing on Instagram and all that stuff. That it really helps. It really helps because there's so many different types of people out there listening to. You would never believe the people listening to this or yours. You know what I mean? Like it's just crazy. So
And there is a podcast for everybody.
Exactly.
Regardless if you're like true crime
Right.
or more talk show, like you said, or more story driven like me. Like there's something for everybody.
Yeah.
You kind of have to find it, but it's out there.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it's been oh man, I just blew up the whole screen. That's all right. Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen you. Since we last seen you, you're a married woman now. Your last name is it Tuchek?
Tuchek, yes.
Okay. So yeah, you're married now, and I know you moved. You're originally from PA, right?
New Philadelphia.
New Philadelphia.
So that's about
Is that
45
Ohio?
minutes south of Akron. Yes, it is.
Okay.
So there's
I thought that was
Philadelphia,
PA.
Pennsylvania, but we're the new one.
Gotcha.
We don't talk about PA for bad blood. So,
That's funny.
so yeah, I kind of did a tour to Northeast Ohio for most of my 20s
Mhm.
and ended up in Lakewood, which is where we met
Yep.
6-7 years ago.
Yeah, I can't believe it.
That is
8?
life.
Oh yeah, I know. Seriously.
6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And yeah, we both served at a church for a while, and then COVID happened, and then a lot of people started shifting their lives, and so then that's kind of where the band broke up.
Right. The band broke up. Yeah, that was that was a wild time. I talk about it often on here. I've learned through doing this show, it's best to leave names of places out. Um, it's been kind of through trial and error. I mean, I've had crazy stuff. I've had like pastors hang up on me. I had a guy on here one time. He didn't like how I was talking about the modern day church, and he just hung up on me. and I was like, actually, well, this is great. I love it. This is even more content for me to keep going and talking about. I love it.
Yeah.
Because as soon as I got too real for him, he messaged me and he's like, "Oh yeah, there's some of that's just private stuff." I'm like, "Yeah, exactly. You want to, well, anyways." Exactly.
Yeah.
But uh, I did, and I know I had messaged you a little bit, um, asking what if you had ever discussed that whole thing on your show, and you told me no. So I didn't know how you felt about talking about any of that. I just wanted to at least address that we were
Yeah.
there. Man, I
No,
keep
I'm happy to because I haven't spoken about it for 3 years,
okay.
and I've been talking about it in therapy.
Yeah, so let's go.
Like the time came, I was ready, my heart was ready, and I
Yeah,
think I just needed time to come down off that high, right? Because COVID
sure.
was nobody's fault in the grand scheme of it, but the veil kind of was lifted from our eyes. And so both of us being from evangelical backgrounds and where we were
Yeah,
serving was very much the same. You just saw a lot of stuff.
yeah,
And yeah, COVID just revealed a whole bunch. And so I was going through my own trauma, you were going through your own. And so yeah, I'm happy to break it down. I'm currently still going through it, but I'm
yeah,
happy to share because
yeah,
it's
yeah,
important too.
for sure. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've had. Do you know who Jonathan Malm is? He's like
No.
a Instagram digital creator mostly. He does a lot of like he did a lot of these AI generated church goer memes and stuff like over the past couple of years, and he's getting pretty popular. I've had him on here a couple times. That he grew up doing missions, so he knows a lot about church stuff. And we oh man, he's so funny. His stuff is so funny. I was supposed to have him on a week ago, but things didn't work out. So hopefully, and that was like the second time rescheduling with him. I whatever. I've had him on before. You sometimes I
Yeah.
hate to say it, like no offense to any like you or anyone I've ever had on here, you can only go so far with having the same guests on over and over and over. You know what I mean? Like you have the same person on, like people skip. You know what I mean? Like they've seen that person before. But probably the best guest I've had, real quick, was I had Aaron Carter's drummer on here, Grayson
No
Lattimore.
way.
Yeah, that was awesome. He talked about Aaron Carter,
Nice.
and he that was the first time he's had other people ask him to interview, and he said no, and he said yes to me. It took I asked him for like a solid year. I kept messaging
Wow.
him, and I'm like, you sure you want to come over? Just let me know. And finally, he was like, yeah, we can talk about it. I was like, sweet, all right, cool. But yeah, I've known him forever through the church. I knew him from church growing up, and he's a solid dude. He's supposed to come back on, but that was probably my favorite episode that I've done so
Nice.
far.
No pressure for me. That's fine. Lay the groundwork.
It's good to get anyone you can. I had a frequent Cleveland comedian, Jeremy Demery. He comes on every now and then. And he's hilarious, and I love
That's
when he
awesome.
comes on too. So, but yeah, no offense to my guests. I love everybody, but yeah. So I
Hey,
mean,
I take
hey,
it.
so yeah, we grew up in Pentecostal churches, and then like and I there's so many, I don't even know where to start with this. So like I want to say like, and I probably told you about this before, but like okay, so when I was in my 20s, I got involved with a church called The Movement out in Youngstown, and that was
Hmm.
when I was like kind of out of church completely, and I'm like, I grew up Pentecostal, really legalistic, and I'm like, do I want to get involved in another church? I'm like, okay. And then I saw like this church was like all people my age, all in their 20s. The pastor was in his 20s. This was like 2012. I moved my whole life out to Youngstown. I was living out there. I've talked about this a billion times on here, but uh, at that time, it was very much like the church we both went to in Lakewood. All people about our age group. We were a little older. We weren't in our 20s. Well, I wasn't. I don't know. I forget. I don't know how. I'm not even going to ask you how old you are. But
I don't care, but I'm younger than you.
yeah, I know that. I know
We
that.
are
So
both in our 30s now.
now you
We
are.
weren't.
Now you are.
We weren't
So
back in
okay.
the day.
So that's like a whole other thing. But anyways, yeah. So I'm in my 20s. Mid 20s, whatever. Everyone else is too. Everyone's hanging out. It was awesome. But then like I moved back home eventually, and then I get involved with the church in Lakewood, and it was very, very much the same to me, the same thing that I experienced out in Youngstown. So I was like, I gravitated towards it right away. I'm like, all right, let's go to this church. It was just like what I was looking for. That was why I didn't want to move from Youngstown, because it was out there. Like, that was what I wanted to have in Cleveland, and it was finally happening. And I'm like, all right, sweet, let me get involved. And immediately I'm on the worship team. Immediately I'm playing every single week. At first I'm like, this is awesome. It was just like I didn't skip a beat at all. And now I'm back home, and just a lot of like unmet expectations. A lot of oh yeah, we're gonna use you to do this and do that, and it would never happen. And like that was I remember like one of so actually next month will be 1 solid year since I quit serving there at the place that we met in Cleveland and or Lakewood. And I have not heard from anyone in like the past year at all. It's crazy. And like even some of the people that like kind of did, I can't say like no one reached out, because I have had some people throughout the past year, but it's
Yeah.
you know why they did. And I mean, since then there's been like documentaries. I don't know if you see the Hillsong documentary
I'm
on.
like, my soul's not ready for it, even
Oh,
though
yeah.
I know what's gonna happen. You know what I mean? It's one of
Right.
those like, ugh. Eventually.
I felt the same way until I watched it, and like I feel like I've watched so many documentaries, I'm at the point where I can tell if it's biased or not. And it was definitely biased in some ways, and it was very half-assed stories and nothing fully like, like concrete. It was just like, I don't know if I believe this person, but who knows? Like, so much has happened. And I know what you mean, though. I totally know what you mean. But yeah. So we were both serving there, and I know you were playing keyboard and singing, on and off, and I was pretty much playing like drums or guitar. But when I first started going there, they're having me like lead worship every week with like Steven, and it was like all guys. Just and then eventually they went from like it was almost like at first they just took whoever they could. Oh, you want to be on the team? All right, sweet. They like promise you the world. And then as soon as like other people came in, they're like, all right, well, we'll kind of put you in the background. Immediately when we started getting more and more vocalists, anyone who played an instrument, you were no longer singing. You were always on an instrument every single week. Which, whatever. I get that. I understood that it was a new church and that you needed. I actually didn't even tell. I'll bleep that out. I didn't even tell in it to. I do. I have to bleep out. This is why this isn't live. All right. Sometimes I go on YouTube live and do this because I mess up and say names. But yeah, I remember telling, like, I didn't even tell him because I knew he was a drummer. I didn't even tell him I played drums because I knew if I did, I'd be on drums. And as soon as I did, I was on drums for like 6 months straight. And it's just, I don't know. I get that. I get that it, you know, serving is serving. There's no, it's just like theater. There's no small parts. You know what I mean? But when it's like a place is like decided, oh, this is where you're gonna be, and that's it, and you're not gonna go any further. Like, why would you stay there? And then my main grievance with the whole thing as a whole, and then I'll let you say something, is just as a whole was having people serve for years and years and years, and then like never offering them any position or anything, just kind of having them serving forever. Like, that's not how you do it. That's not how you do it, and that's how you lose people. You lose people serving that way. And anyways, yeah. So you've been seeking, talking about it in therapy or whatever you said.
Yeah.
Maybe you could help me because I have not. This has been my therapy doing this.
Yeah, no, that's great.
This is my own form of therapy doing it this way.
And
So
it's free for the most part. So good
yeah,
on you.
yeah.
Yeah, so I can't remember when I got on the team. I think it was like 2018. I think like spring of 2018.
Mm.
'Cause I started coming like the fall before, and I waited a couple months before I like joined growth track or whatever the heck it is and did the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think you were probably already on the team by that point, but there was a lot of us. It was like this just general meeting. Anybody who can sing or play an instrument, come in. We'll grandfather you in, whatever the heck that meant at the time. And you're
Yeah.
just in, right?
Yeah.
And so I approached the leader after that meeting. I was like, hey, I play piano. And he's like, oh my God, that's phenomenal. Like, can you
Yeah.
come to practice on Thursday? And I was like, sure. And so I'm elated. I'm just living the high life. And I was trained classically. So I read sheet music. And Ryan, I can't even begin to tell you. Um, there's such a thing called as playing by ear
Mm-hmm.
and playing chords. And obviously, like anyone who's not classically trained knows that, and people who are classically trained know that. I had no idea. So here I am trying to figure out what a G chord is on the piano, what a G sus7 is, because Lord, that must have been written in Greek because I had no idea.
Mm.
And so I barely make it through that rehearsal. And the leader and I joked afterwards, and he's like, maybe we shouldn't have you play on Sunday. I was like, that's the best idea I've heard all day.
Mm.
So I tried to learn. I tried to learn keys, and that was the absolute hardest thing. So I came in as a singer, right? Because I have a background in theater. I was like, I can sing, I can hold a tune.
Yeah.
But I also knew how to play piano, so I could use me wherever you need me, right?
Yeah.
And so for the first year, I was on keys. And again, no sheet music. We used the Nashville number system. Every professional musician knew what that was. I did not.
And
I
that
had
right there,
in-
sorry to cut you off,
No, go.
that should have been a whole class teaching everyone how to do that, because that took me a long time to learn that playing in
I
church.
still didn't get it.
I
Like
still don't.
I understand the fundamentals of it.
Yeah.
But Ryan, no joke. I don't know if you remember this. I actually had 3x5 note cards every Sunday I played.
Yeah.
Because I understand that music is rhythmic and music is repetitive. And I completely understand that verse 1 and verse 2 are the same chord progression. The chorus is going to be a slightly different version. The bridge is going to add one more note in just to make it spicy. The whole thing repeats.
Yeah.
I know that. But to actually put my hands to the keys and remember that, G, C, B, D, whatever, forget about it.
Mm.
I have performed in front of various amounts of people in my lifetime. I had never had so much performance anxiety
Yeah.
ever than when I was at because when I was at that church. And sorry, it was whatever.
Oh, you're
And
good.
so I remember asking to like have a seat to sit down because I was like, Bethel sits down, Hillsong's keyboardist sit down. Like, why the drummer sits down? Why can't keyboardist sit down?
Sure.
I literally needed that because every time I came on stage, I would be fine during morning announcements. And then as soon as the first chord hit for the first song, I had so much like vertigo-ish symptoms. I was dizzy. I
Mm.
felt like I was going to fall the entire time. I never did. So I was like, I need to sit down because I am not feeling stable. Like room is spinning. It's a whole thing.
Mm.
So the fact that I did that for a year, I'm amazed. And it proves that we can do hard things. So that was a true fake it till you make it, except I never made it. I just faked it. There was not a, hey, I became a better musician after that. Hey, I learned something I never knew before. Actually, yes, both of those are true. But because I was surrounded by literal professional musicians, and I think that was one of the downfalls of this group as a whole, was that there was such a division between those who have played in rock bands, who have done other professional gigs, whether it be jazz or R&B or blues. And then you had people like I was the only person that had a background in music as opposed to like the theater performing aspect. And then you had a whole bunch of people that just love singing. So
Yep.
already there's this great divide because yes, worship is a lot of singing. It is a lot of playing instruments. It is a cohesiveness. But the downfall was that there was no, I'll just say for lack of a better word, like continuing education, right?
Mhm.
There
Yep.
was no like, hey, I really want to join this team. I just started with the guitar. How do I do this? Like, what are you guys looking for?
Right.
The audition process was very secretive. And I knew people that had left the church because they never got a response after they auditioned.
Yeah.
And so, okay, that's fine. If you can't sing well enough to be a lead, which was my story, quite honestly. No one ever told me that to my face, but I figured it out based off of who they had singing and knowing that my voice was not their voice. They weren't ready to change it up because it was all rock and roll. It was all rock and roll. Okay. And so I'm like Sarah Bareilles in a world of Pink and Lady Gaga
Eh,
vocally. You know what I mean? But just in that
yeah.
setting, like that's what it was, right?
Yeah.
And I had been begging for acoustic nights or mornings or something because I'm like, that's more my speed. That is
Right. Right.
like Graves into Gardens is a great song, but like that's not my vibe.
Right.
Like that's not what I'm vocally strong in. And so it was a lot of understanding that later on of it was professional musicians running the show. Wow, that was great. There was no hope for those who were aspiring to be better in their craft or who wanted to do worship, but again, didn't understand that worship's just not about singing songs. It is a
Yeah.
lifestyle. It is something that you literally pour your entire self into.
Yeah.
And there needs to be a certain nuance with that, right? Like you look at worship in the Old Testament, you look at worship in the New Testament. Like it's not just about the song, even though evangelical church has put so much emphasis on what you're singing. And so lo and behold, it was great worship. But there were times where we were more focused on whose mic's the loudest, how many times are we going to do this bridge, how many ooh la la's can we add in, and make sure the drummer has a good beat. And so that made me very conflicted with what I knew about God and worship because I'm remembering the story of I think it's Elisha, one of them. Noah, sorry, it was Jeremiah. He leaves his city because they're after him. They want to take his life. And he goes out on a mountaintop or he sleeps by a tree or something of that sort. And there was a thunderstorm and God wasn't in the thunderstorm. There was an earthquake and God wasn't in the earthquake. Like after all of that, God came as a still small voice. And for some reason that has really stuck with me when it comes to worship. Like I'm not saying like graves into gardens or there ain't no grave or none of those things. Apparently grave is just the word I'm using. That's the all here's the thing. Those songs that we used to sing are the only ones I remember. Like I have not listened to anything
Mm.
in the last 4 years, so I don't know what is new and hip. But for all of the songs back then, like there's different kinds of worship songs too.
Yeah.
And no one tells you that. And so there's a flow that services need to have. And so in my opinion, it was a lot of we really need to give a good show in order for the spirit to move.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, that's fine, but we're not charging tickets. We're giving earbuds out because it's very, very loud, which was
Yeah.
the smart thing to do. But it became more about the performance than it did about who we were supposedly worshiping.
Yeah.
And I got a lot of notes about, hey, move your body.
Mm.
I'm sorry. What? So I understand being deadpanned and like there is a certain atmosphere or vibe that gives off.
Yeah.
And I understood what they were saying because when we would watch I almost said the show back, when we watch the show back, when we would watch like the service back, or we would not be serving that Sunday and actually watch the camera when they were live streaming. It's like, oh yeah, you definitely understand those that have the energy and those that are awake and those that are in it versus those who are not.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a really weird note because I got a note to move my body. There were other people, lead vocalists, no names need to be mentioned, that they didn't need to do anything except stand there
Yeah.
and bless people. And so it's like, okay, not there's the rules do not apply to everybody.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, the biggest grievance was, well, I'll tie that into something else, but it was just like the great divide of professionals versus amateurs.
Right.
And there was no bridge to connect either of them. And that was an unfortunate thing because how cool. My whole thing when I left church was like, oh my gosh, we missed out on discipleship, right? Because everybody talks about it. How many people actually are living that out or doing something about it. And like,
Yeah.
how absolutely freaking awesome wouldn't have been to like host a music workshop where one month was like you focus on guitarists, one month you focus on vocal, whatever. It's not like I
Yeah.
had it planned out to the T, but it's like we have such an opportunity to grow musicianship in Cleveland that already is such a big music scene.
Yeah.
But to really bring up people and like steward them, that's a big church word, but like in their gifts would have been great. Because I knew I had friends that were singing in the choir. And I do think the choir was a good idea because that was a very fun time. And that actually brought a lot of people in who, quite honestly, would not have been part of leading
Right.
because they were vocally not there.
Right.
And so I knew that my friends that were
Amongst
in
other
choir,
things.
100%. So my friends in the choir, I knew that they were never going to sing because I was never going to sing.
Yeah.
It's like I did not break that news to them. I was just like, hey, you happy you're here?
It's almost like it being in high school. It was like being in high school
100%.
because everyone, uh, it was, yeah, it was, it was just, I don't even know how to explain that. It was like being in high school and you knew who the popular ones were. You knew who the second string ones were, but no one talked about it. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of things wrong with the modern day church and how it's run as a whole, but the worship team I think is the biggest mess right now, just because of the whole, like you said, it being a big performance. A lot of that comes from the Pentecostal church, and I think that's why, I mean, the church that this church came out of was a mega church in Cleveland, out in North Canton. So I mean, you're coming from that type of atmosphere.
Yeah,
And
that expression too, because
yeah,
evangelical Pentecostal, like
right.
they're the most
I
move
get
your
the
body
yeah, and
kind of people.
yeah, and that's how they were trying to model us off of that church, and it was a huge church with a bunch of vocalists. They go through the same things there. They know who's going to be leading and who's not. Every now and then they'll throw you a loop and throw you a song and be like, oh, whoa, I had no idea I was going to be leading. But it was very rare, maybe like once a year that would happen to me. And the fact that I was there, like I think it was 7 years. Yeah, it was 7. That was what I felt like God wanted me to fulfill, was the number of perfection. Right at 7 years is what I was like, all right, because I like that whole last year, it was rough. Just playing bass in the background every week. I think I played
It was
drums
hard
once.
because of switching everything over to virtual. And this is no one's fault because everywhere in the world had to do this, right? We were all figuring out in real time. All right, we've never live streamed something before.
Oh, during the
Let's
pandemic.
go and let's do it. Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
And so
that
I think
was
my other thing too was that instead of having that whole discipleship thing be in place,
yeah.
we outsourced people
Yes,
who could get
yes.
the songs the night before, and I'm pretty sure they did, if not the
Mhm.
morning of, right? Like,
Mhm.
I'm being petty, but it was at least a couple days before, who did not come to rehearsal, who just showed up Sunday morning like it was nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that not only hurt me and my feelings,
Yeah.
that hurt me, my feelings, and my friends who I'm like, they didn't get a chance to work on anything.
Right.
Not that we all can lead, because I think that that is a thing. Not everyone is supposed to lead. Like, I agree with that. But don't just leave us high and dry after something we've built, having so much like pride in what this whole thing was. And then, hey, we're just going to get professionals and like trade off people here and there.
And that's the problem.
And
Go ahead.
yes, no, you're good.
That's the problem is, and I've talked about this before, as a drummer, I've been in churches that have no drummer, and they're like, hey, can you play this week? And I play. And then the next week they go without a drummer, and they go, oh man, it's really not the same without a drummer. Well, yeah, now you're in a conundrum because you don't have a drummer, and it sounds great when you do. And anytime, it doesn't matter what the situation is, anytime you take away from something, it's so hard to revamp. So when they brought in all these professional musicians and jazz musicians or whatever, they couldn't lower the bar. They've already set the bar here, so we can't bring anyone who's less talented because it's gonna be less, and
Yeah.
that was the problem, is not building but trying to go big at the beginning. And
Yeah.
I remember our first service back in 2016 when we were at the small Masonic temple, and we had like, it was the pastor's wife's brother. So her brother was playing bass and he was ridiculous. He had like a 6 string bass, and he was like, yeah, and I was asking him what chords, and he was playing full chords on the bass.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, what did you just do? I'm like, I have no idea what you just did. And
Like, we
and,
can't
and
follow that.
exactly, and he was very like, yeah, it's just this. I'm like, oh, okay. And then like the drummer was really good, and then like I remember they even had like that first service, they had like security teams from Faith Family there, like in the background, like with the ear monitors in, like they made it look so. I think the whole idea with that was to, hey, let's make this look legit. That way people will start coming, and it worked. Because then slowly those people quit coming, and they went back to Canton, and it did work up until the pandemic, which kind of put the
Mm-hmm.
kibosh on everything. Even my band, I got to say, like my band, we had a following before the pandemic, and people would come to our shows, and not anymore. It's like no one wants to do anything anymore. It's crazy, but yeah, it was just like you said, the musicianship and expecting, having high expectations out of people who are, you know, just learning to play this genre of music. And I remember like that wasn't the vision of the church. The vision at the first social gathering we ever had, slash acoustic worship, whatever, was, it was not that. It was like, hey, why can't we incorporate like gospel and this and that, and like mix it together? And I was like, okay, cool. And then that didn't happen. Instead we're playing the tracks. Like that just never happened for years and
And
years and years.
I will bet you a significant amount of money that even though I played the keyboard, my sound was off and you just heard the tracks.
No, it was in there. It was in there. I could hear it in the
I mean,
monitors.
a tiny bit.
Yeah.
I think the only time you actually heard me was when I went on stage at the very end and played a little interlude as the pastor was kind of
And they,
finishing
yeah.
up. And I actually asked, like weeks ahead of time, I would ask a couple people that were on keyboard that I trusted and who were so gracious, because we all know that anybody in the arts can have an attitude about anything at any time.
Mm-hmm.
They were so gracious, and they were in different genres of playing the piano. And so they would be like, okay, do this chord. Here's how you do that progression. Here's how you move to the next. So I was getting taught by not the leader, because you only have capacity for so much, right? And so I do believe like you have to learn from other people. You shouldn't expect it all from one person.
Right.
But yeah, so many things were said like, hey, we're going to write our own music, and hey, we're going to go on retreats, and hey, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And so a lot of that just didn't happen.
Yeah.
And I no, there's space to make grace for the things that don't work out.
Right.
But we all were chasing a different part of the vision. And so
Yeah.
I think the vision started out as a picture or a window, and then it broke probably before COVID. And so all of us are just having different pieces and shards of this broken stained glass window for the sake of tying it back into church, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're all trying to look through different versions of the same thing, but ultimately our pieces weren't connecting to the original picture.
Yeah.
How do you sit with that? What do you do? And quite honestly, I mean, you know this from all of your years of playing, we just got burnt out,
Oh,
and
yeah.
we got burnt out
Big
quick.
time. Yeah.
And I understand serving leaders. I understand it's volunteer, but all of us were working 40 plus hours a week and then putting in a 40-hour work week in one day
Right.
on a Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And then trying to get back to whatever our lives are in a healthy, functional routine. Yet we were so sold on this thing that we suffered in other ways of our lives just to make it to rehearsal, just to put on a great show
Mm-hmm.
on Sunday. And then when we get off of that high, we have to keep coming back to it. So it was almost this weird addiction, you can call it whatever you want, thing, But I was really less about God in the whole thing. And I was more or less like, who can I impress? Who can I let see me? And
Mm.
that's where therapy has helped, because this same experience with church is the exact same experience I had in college.
Mm.
The exact same environment, the exact same, like, hey, I have some talent. I need to find out what avenue my talent works best in. Going into auditions, flopping them miserably. I have stories for days. But ultimately wanting to be seen and not, because I was not the favorite. I was not in the special program. I was not in those classes. There were classes in college that were restricted because I was not the favorite. I was not in this particular degree where you did have everything open to you. And so I'm going through all of that trauma from college, not really working that out because I'm young, I'm green. I just want to perform, right? It's the most fun thing in the world.
Yeah.
And then I get to this church and it's like, oh my gosh, the patterns. Like it took me a couple of years to figure it out, but the pattern was the same. My behavior was the same. I was wanting the same things I was wanting years ago and
Yeah.
putting all of my hope and trust and dreams into this team to make it something to like almost repair what I didn't repair earlier.
Yeah.
And I think the best thing that my therapist summarized for me with that whole time is like, even before we get to the end of our life, we're going to have regrets, right? My biggest regret was stopping playing the piano at 16 years old because I wanted to sing. Not that that was a bad thing. I had no idea that I would get back into playing the keyboard piano sooner than I expect. I had no idea. I thought I
Yeah.
was done with it. So I really wished what I knew now I could have known back then and continued. It is what it is. But with everything in life that we wanted to do, especially in our 20s, 30s, whatever, I was like, man, I got to do some things, but they're not the things I wanted to do. And so my therapist is like, okay, her and I have actually very similar stories in church. So it's actually very rewarding just to be listening to someone who's walked what I have walked. And so she's like, okay, you got to do some pretty cool shit in your 20s. There's still more cool shit to come.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy moly. And life really is all about pivoting. And yeah, we're not going to have the experiences that we want to. And I think it hurts the worst when it is a spiritual setting because we expect it to be different.
Yeah.
And when it turns out that I had a lot of spiritual experiences when I was doing theater outside of being with religious people who kind of set the precedence, like that started shifting a lot of things for me too, of like, wow, I'm seeing a lot more kindness. I'm seeing a lot more discipleship, even. I'm seeing a lot more teamwork in places where church people would not hang out.
Yeah.
And I'm reminded that Jesus hung out with the people that I chose to hang out with and get a degree with and perform with and all of those things. And so what I have learned, even though I have not been to church in a long, long time, a lot of stuff to wrestle, a lot of stuff to figure out. And number one, never stop being curious, never stop asking questions. There's enough there to not even to make a good case, but there's just enough to work through. And it's totally fine no matter where you are to work through it because everybody's experience is different. Yet certain denominations have a tie through of like, yep, we definitely see this happening.
Yeah.
And also just realize that none of what happened was our fault. We were just in the wrong place at the wrong time, but it felt like we were at the right place at the right
Mm.
time. And to some extent, that was true, right? Like
Yeah.
we never would have met. We never would have bonded about growing up in Pentecostal backgrounds and
Right.
all of this stuff. And it's like, so there was a lot of good that happened. I met a really solid core group of friends from that church. And so not all of it was bad, but letting it go for so long without checks and balances and
Yeah.
accountability in place,
Right.
that's just not what you should be modeling to people
No.
because people are going to leave and closure is a very hard thing to find. That's going to mess with a lot of people emotionally and mentally and spiritually. Like, what do I do now? And so
Yeah.
I've been out of it for a very long time. Coming back to it, whenever I do, it's going to look completely different because there's still so much to work on. So I don't have to be perfect before the next season, but yeah, definitely ready to start figuring out more how college and church were so related, and how can I move on without that closure. But also know that, yeah, a lot of good stuff happens in church and a lot of not great stuff
Right.
happens in church. And we were just at a church that was trying to experience and try to promise a lot of things and say a lot of things and be a lot of things for a lot of people. And it's like those who mattered most.
Yeah.
We weren't poured into. It was all about getting those butts in seats, right? And that's a
Yep.
whole other topic. But it's like, okay, why not work with the people that you have?
Yeah.
Why not pour into them? Because
Yeah.
other people that come into the church, they're going to see them first before they see the pastor,
Exactly.
right? And so if we're supposed to be creating this atmosphere, if we're supposed to be building this community, then it needs to start with volunteers. It needs to start with the people who are giving of themselves
Right.
above and beyond
Right.
to really make this thing happen.
Yeah. That's so true. Yeah, you said that the wrong place at the wrong time or something like that. Like that's how I felt the entire time. Like I constantly asked myself that question while I was living in Lakewood. I was like, am I not supposed to be here right now? Maybe I'm supposed to be somewhere else right now. I don't know why I had that thought. What a weird thought to have, but it probably was because of what I was going through there and experiencing at that place. And um I felt like I wasted like the latter end of my younger years there, because I was like 29 years old when I actually joined that place. Now I'm deep in my 30s, and it's like, man, like so kind of going back, like I didn't go to college per se. Went to recording school, but which I went to for free because of my experience at that church out in Youngstown. So I guess a similar experience for me was being at that church out there, and it was the same thing. The only difference for me was I was younger and marketable. I was more marketable back then. I was like 23 years old. They were using me at the main campus all the time. They eventually like gave me my own campus to like I was leading worship every Sunday and like also putting the set list together and also scheduling the people. Like I was doing the whole thing and I loved it. It was easy. I did it while I was at work because I got a pretty easy job, but for the most part, but I was just kind of like downtime on my phone. I'm like, I can schedule this just sitting here with my brain and just schedule this and have it done. And uh, it was the same. I didn't realize that there were people going through what I went through back then. I didn't realize that there were people who were also friends of mine who I knew weren't being used in the capacity that they wanted to be used in. And I get it. It's doesn't matter what I look at it like, God, like scripture says, God looks at man looks at the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart. So really, it doesn't matter where you're serving, but at the same time, man, it's you got to know your worth. You got to know your worth. Um, the other major issue in the church was hiring musicians, having paid musicians, which I've been on the receiving end of that as well. I've yeah, I currently am. I'm currently at a church that pays me, and that is the only reason why I'm there. That is the only reason why I'm there is because it's a paycheck. But I gotta say, it is healthier. It's not nearly as demanding.
Yeah.
It's just be there and it's a job. I'm not crazy about the leadership. I've actually had a lot of drama happen there recently. They started a youth group and they wanted me to get involved, and I dipped my toe in there, and I was like, you know what? Nope. I'm done. There was just weird stuff. But anyways, that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, it's crazy. That's just crazy. Like I guess I never really considered being like the pressure, because I've played so many shows. Like I looked at it like playing a show. So like it really didn't hit me in that way. So I guess I just didn't consider people who aren't used to that atmosphere, or that high demand of performance. Like I just didn't consider how anyone
Yeah, and
felt.
I remember I think it was December of 22 was, I think, one of the years that we switched. We did a giant Christmas service, right? Because Christians are really only known for Easter and Christmas on purpose. And so, like,
Yeah.
it was this big production. And so I think we all lost our religion in we were well on our way to all losing our collective religion, like when we did the first big Christmas Eve bash in 2019, I think it was.
Yeah.
That was absolutely
Oh,
horrendous,
let's
right?
talk about it. Let's please talk about this
So I
because
wanted
I
to. So let's talk about that, and then let me go to the very
uh
last one, because let me talk about the last one, and then let's go back. I was in a weird, like, I was not a favorite, but I was in that in between. So my last Christmas was it 2020? I think it was. I think I only did 3 Christmas Eve shows. So the last one, we're in that giant warehouse, right?
oh, you guys recorded. I wasn't even asked to
Yeah.
be in that. They didn't even
Okay,
ask me.
here's what. And again, what did we do? We outsourced, right? And I understand if you want a special guest for Christmas, like, that's all great, well, and wonderful. I had built up such a rapport with the leader that I helped build set lists. I helped on kind of like the admin back end. So there was a lot of stuff I was doing behind the scenes, and I wasn't doing as much performing as I thought I was going to do.
Yeah.
And so we had talked about, hey, we're going to show up at this time on this day and kind of plan out Christmas Eve. And obviously, we're going to have to do a little bit more because cameras and all of that stuff. I'm like, great, yeah, I'll be there. So I'm there probably 15, 20 minutes before the big discussion starts. It was already planned.
Hmm.
I'm like, what am I doing here? So the reason I say that is what helped make me stand out was just the fact that I was used to a professional schedule with theater. So
Yeah.
that last Christmas, we put that show together and filmed it in 2 weeks.
Oh wow.
Yes. From the time that songs were picked to the time that we recorded, 2 weeks.
Wow.
I knew so many people, and we had a fairly big worship team, and it was all said and done, collecting over the years and whatever before kind of like the mass exodus. There were so many people that would have buckled under that pressure.
Yeah.
And I knew that I could handle it. I didn't think it was fair, but I understood. But then there's also other people like yourself, for crying out loud. It's like, did we have to have the opening act that we did? Was it cool? Sure. We had our own people who were cool,
Yeah.
so I'm strangely glad that I had that experience, because I knew what it took to put on a show in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So I had that going for me, but it's like, man, it's just about putting on a show
Yeah.
and saying that we're going to praise Jesus and throw a couple of amens in there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I understand that it's, yes, a production, and yes, there's a camera crew and a whole film schedule. And I think we shot it over 2 days. But it's just like, and I come from the world of scheduled, like, everyone knows I've put a show on, and I put that Christmas production on in 2 weeks. I've put on a show in 4 weeks, and then you've had 6 to 8, maybe 10 if you're very, very lucky, and that's a very long time.
Yeah.
But I knew, like, when we got our scripts, we had a table read. We knew the entire schedule from the day we started choreography and music to when we performed.
Yeah.
And so I'm coming into this being like, I understand that professional worlds move very quickly, and there's a lot of whatever, it just moves faster.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, you're split off into team professional and team amateur. Team amateur has no idea what they're getting themselves into, and this is
Right.
Christmas. It's already the most stressful time of the year. And to going back to that first one, it's like, I think we put that on in 4 weeks, 3 weeks. I think we got our music like the week after Thanksgiving. So we literally have 3 weeks.
Yeah.
That's big. Like, I know not everybody's involved in every song, but not only do you have the choreography on stage with what's happening, like, you have backstage choreography. We all need to know what is happening in this whole show that we're just making up in real time.
Yeah.
So yeah, speak to that, because that was just, incredibly stressful. I'm like, that's not the way it should be. I
Yeah.
understand that we have artistic creative vision. We can do whatever the heck we want. But at the same time, we're human beings. We're not
Yeah.
robots.
I remember you
We are
were.
dealing with stuff.
I
Like,
remember you
this
were
is a lot.
one of the years you were really sick too, and you were like dead, laying in the pews of the church. Like you couldn't even like move, and you still had to. I think you were playing keyboard with
Hmm.
JC,
Yeah.
and I remember that you're out. Yeah, you know, we did so many of those. It's all kind of a blur. I can't remember what
Yes. I
happened.
don't know
What?
which one was which year, but like it was 3 consecutive
Yeah,
years.
and sometimes we do the same Chris Tomlin song every year, so it was like I really can't remember. But all I remember was yes, the year they didn't ask me to play, and then as soon as we came back into service, not long after that, I get a call. Hey, since you were here from the beginning, we want you there for the return or whatever. And I'm like, well, where did everyone go? You guys had a team for months. Where'd they go? Oh, they're not there. They're I don't know. I don't know. I didn't know anyone. So like, it was like starting over. And I almost didn't come back when we came back from COVID. Like I almost was gonna start going to another church, Renew Communities over in
Mhm.
Middleburg Heights. I
Yeah.
was gonna start going there because like my singer, my band, him and his family go there. I
Okay.
was thinking about going there, and I was like, I guess I'll go back. I think it was that phone call probably asking me to come back. That's all it took. Oh yeah, let me hop to it, and it was just like I don't know. Like for me, I don't know. There's just so many avenues to go down with it all, but at the end of the day, yeah, it was very much a performance. Okay, so sticking with the Christmas Eve, whatever it was called. Uh,
Always.
so I remember last year, or maybe it was 2 years ago, whenever I guess it would have been maybe last year. Um, we get an email or a message or whatever in that group that we used. I saw it and it said like, hey, it seems like we've put too much emphasis on the music over there. Gee, you think? It's all it was music. I could not believe that was even in the message. And like we're gonna do something a little more stripped down this year. And well, anyways, um, the year before that, we had a terrible blizzard come through. We were not ready for this. My grandfather had passed away. This must have been 2020, I guess. So my grandfather had passed away. I'm at his funeral. I'm actually at the wake the night before, which you came to.
I
Thank you.
did. Yeah, that was the first. Yeah.
Thank you very much. That was very nice
You're
of you.
welcome.
Um, and I got a call before I walked in there from one of the worship leaders saying, like, the guitar player that they hired actually had COVID and he can't play now. And it was like the weeks before Christmas. He's like, can you just learn as many guitar parts as you possibly can? I'm like, yeah, sounds good. Like I'm at a I'm at my grandfather's funeral right now. I'll get back to you. And they're like, oh, sorry about that. Yeah, if you could just learn as much as you can, because this guy that they brought in, like, it was just such a disaster. Because I remember, actually, I think this wasn't even the year of the blizzard. This was another year. My God, it's so intertwined. But like, I just remember it wasn't going to happen. It was because COVID was the thing. And every 2 weeks we would have practice and someone would have it and we'd have to take another 2 weeks off. It just, we didn't have it together. And then I remember the last year, the year of the blizzard, we had practiced and practiced and practiced. And the night before, we knew it was going to be a blizzard. We're still setting up and hoping that the weather was going to be okay, even though it was like negative 10 outside. And I'm like, I just had a feeling. I actually got really pissed at that rehearsal because I was just playing electric guitar and they had no more room on stage. It was to the point where I would have been better off just standing backstage playing
Oh my
guitar
gosh.
because I was behind the choir. They had a choir and I'm like behind the choir, behind the keyboard, behind like completely in the dark. I had to put glow in the dark strips on my guitar so I could see what I was playing because I could not even see my frets. I'm not even kidding. I'm not even kidding. And there's a meme Instagram group. Their running joke is if you're the bass player, guitar player, and you're in a picture on social media for a church, the running joke is, oh, someone's getting fired. A photographer's getting fired for putting you in the photos or whatever. Anyways. But yeah, it's true because like I was completely in the dark, and man, that the blizzard came. We ended up having to cancel the whole thing because the power went out in the place. So like, it was just, I couldn't believe it. I knew it was just so funny. Like I feel like the mad scientist in a disaster movie going, "It's gonna blow," and everyone's like, "Oh, we're so hopeful." And look what happened. God came and like turned the lights out, basically.
Mhm.
That's what it took. It was crazy.
Sometimes he does do that, right?
Right, basically. I mean, my goodness. So yeah, I mean, the whole thing, it was definitely I did learn things. It was a learning experience.
Yes.
For sure. Since then, it's almost been a year, like I said, since I've been there. I I gotta say, like, and every now and then I will turn it on. I'll watch it on YouTube just out of curiosity, and it's pretty much the same thing. It's the same setup. Singers, a drummer, hardly any music, all tracks. The messages are always good though. That's the thing. Like the messages are good. I just don't understand the. I just don't know how it got to the man. And there's so many ways we we could talk about this, but
Yeah, it's just it was all on the shoulders of the lead guy. And then I leave in 2021. And not long after, him and his family leave, which nobody saw coming. He went to a different church and was probably paid, if not paid more. That whole thing.
So
that's all I knew.
He's back, right?
I did not know.
I turned it on a couple weeks ago, and he's in the background playing acoustic with a talkback mic. Because I don't know if I think I sent you that on Instagram that they were looking for someone to cultivate their. They're still having issues with it. And one thing I talked about with my friend Michael Butler, who I mentioned before, he's a pastor out in Texas, worship pastor. He said, like, typically the lead pastor will not want to get involved in the worship team. They want someone else to just take care of it. So anytime I came to our pastor with whatever was going on, it was like he just didn't care. He literally shrugged his shoulders and was like what can you do? Yeah. And I'm like, there's a lot you can do. And then by the time I left, he was overseeing the worship team on Thursday nights. He was at the rehearsals. He was there just to see what was going on because there was weird things that were going on at rehearsals. There was, I mean, when you left, some of the, and I think it goes all the I don't want to be so gossipy, but like, just
what have we been doing this whole time?
Right. I know. In a roundabout way. I'm leaving names out. Names out, but things that were said by certain people at rehearsal, and I'm just like, what? And like, let's get it together. You know what I mean? Like, let's get it together here. Like,
yeah.
It was just weird. Even it got to the point where even the rehearsals felt phony, and people are like acting like they're worshiping and stuff. It just, I don't know if they were or not. I don't know. It got to the point where the line was so muddled you couldn't tell what was real and what was fake anymore. It was, you know what I mean? And
I think that happened, a while ago with our, lead person. And then again, everyone's scrambling after they leave, right? Because it was all on his shoulders. Like he had full control, and you saw that.
Yeah.
You saw that there was no way that it was him that was going to build that bridge between professionals and amateurs, right? Like there was so much hope on him as a leader.
Yeah.
And then that whole experience opened up another door of things to continue to talk about in therapy, because I'm like, wow, there have been so many white evangelical men in all of the churches that I have been a part of. No, seriously.
Yeah.
That I don't trust anymore.
I
have at least 5 or 6 of them, and I went through each of their stories in counseling once. I was like, it started off with 3 youth pastors back in the day, boom, boom, boom. One left because of a serious physical illness. He ended up passing several years later. So it was wise for them to move closer to family so that everyone could be taken care of and supported. The second one came, and I was probably 14, 15. I remember this like it was yesterday. It was a random Sunday morning that I was at home in bed, and that was only happened because I was probably very, very sick. Because our butts were in seats or else, right, growing up. And so I remember my family came home. We had an emergency meeting in my bedroom. That never happened. And so they said, okay, our pastor read a letter about what has been happening with the youth pastor. Turns out he was found out looking at porn at the church during office hours. And so that was a whole thing, right? His wife was pregnant with their first or second child. Like, it was a whole thing. And so they're gone, right? Third guy comes in. He basically just joins the family business, even though he should have been a professional football player. Like, that was the build. He was a guy's guy. And he just flat out did not want to be there. He went through the motions. And again, it's really hard finding that balance of like, hi, I'm a teenage girl. Like, you're supposed to be like spiritually leading me. Like, what does that look like in a healthy way? Of course, and I don't know if anyone's had those conversations, right? And it was one of those things where it's like, okay, here's someone who doesn't want to be here. And then I did not do church for years and years and years. And then I find the church that we connected at. And I do feel like I did have a lot of God moments and I did experience a lot of Holy Spirit in worship and outside of it. And just so I did have experiences, but then it's like, okay, here's another man in leadership that didn't break just my trust, but countless others. But he could get away with it because he knew he knew what he could do.
Yeah.
He was talented, and he had the charisma for days, right? And so there was just that belief that, okay, you know what you're doing, we'll let you do it. Where were his checks and balances?
Yeah. Oh.
Who was directing? Who was being his spiritual advisor? He was a lone ship in the sea, just navigating without anything.
Yeah.
And so it's like, man, I do have a lot of trust issues.
Yeah.
Hello. Like, it's sad, but true the world over of like, this is ridiculous.
I knew, so I'm a big, Reliant K fan, and I knew the stories because he was in that band.
Yeah.
And I knew what happened between him and the lead vocalist there. So I kind of knew right away that he was a hothead. I already knew that right away. So I kind of saw it coming. I did not think he would be there as long as he was, actually. I thought, because in 2016, I first met him, he seemed almost kind of disconnected. Like, oh, yeah, I'm going to be leading worship here. And I was like, okay, well, they already got a worship leader. Like, I knew that right away. Like the first social gathering before the church was even a thing. And, and then when he told me his name, I was like, oh, I know I know this guy. I know, I've never met him before, but I knew of him. And I was like, okay. So
he had a reputation.
Yeah, big time. It's just funny.
You were actually the one who told me his claim to fame. I was oblivious. And I was like, oh my gosh, because I grew up with that band, like, right? Like, got me through high school. Like,
right.
That was our generation. Right?
Yeah.
Like, Be My Escape was like the album that got us through everything, among others. And it's like,
right.
Again, he's a professional. He's done this.
Yeah.
Not in the worship Jesus capacity, but like, well, he probably did at some point before that.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, so it's easy to put trust in someone who knows what they're doing. Right.
Yeah.
But to have someone who is able to cultivate worship.
Well, they never.
It's a big deal.
And they never
it's a big deal.
They never gave anyone who was in a position the title pastor. It was always worship director, worship president, which was what the other Stephen, that was his title was president, worship president. Yeah.
That is so weird.
He introduced himself as that at a meeting one time, and then so I don't know if you know about what. Let's just get into it. I don't know if you know what happened.
I don't know anything.
So he was asked to step down like a year ago
Wow.
because there were a few young ladies that got into a quarrel over him.
I'm surprised that didn't happen earlier. Let's be honest, right?
Yeah.
Like,
And
because when we were there, hundreds of other people were already married with kids, and
yeah.
all of us are just like, okay, we're ready. Like, let's find our person, because that's
Yeah.
what we grew up believing, right? You find your spouse in church, like you do
Right.
all these good things, and it comes to you. So I am surprised that that didn't happen sooner.
Yeah. Me
That's
too.
crazy.
But once, and I think it was probably, my guess is that's why they told him to step down, because they didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
Um, the way that was done, we had a whole meeting, and he was like, "Yeah, I've been leading worship my whole life, and I just need to take a break or whatever." It was really like not true. It's not what happened. Like, no one
Yeah.
believes you. And some people in the group, and some people were new and they just met him. They're like, "Oh, well, that's kind of unfortunate. I was hoping, I was looking forward to working with you and doing worship with you." And he, they never, that was his excuse. He had to basically explain, just because he started dating someone, like, it's not like he like had a baby on the way or something like that. It wasn't anything like that. It was just started dating someone, and another young lady got upset, and I guess now they left the church. I know who it is. I'm gonna keep the names out, but like it caused like this thing where like everyone was upset, and it was just weird. And like, yeah, it's just that whole high school thing, that whole high school
Yeah.
mentality again, and the fact that it
Yeah.
resulted in a meeting. What do I give a shit about who's dating who? I could care
Yeah.
less about that. Like, I
And
have
the
so
fact
many.
too that we don't care enough about leaders to have multiple ones so that others can have a break.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that just is logical to me, and I'm more of a feeler type of person. But like,
Right.
when you're dealing with how emotional this gets,
Yeah.
with the time it takes to put into rehearsal, the time it takes to craft what the experience will be, right? There were a lot of times on Sunday mornings where we had chosen the set list, either was 50-50 or 100-100, or someone had to change out a song for whatever reason. I would have like one hand, one eye closed in worship, and like have the other eye directed out into the audience. See, I don't even call it a congregation. That's how much it was a performance. And
Yeah.
I would look out into the crowd of people, and I would try to see who was being moved.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's all about atmosphere. It's all about ushering in XYZ. I'm like, do you know how many other things we can usher in
Yeah.
doing the same exact thing?
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like, man, if we would have had like even small groups, like group A, B, and C, right? Like, rotate out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just like, how do other people do it? Like, because I'm sure other mega churches have experienced all of this. They just have better press to handle it, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, how, I don't know, how is a human being and taking care of that human being not at the forefront of a team's mind?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just like, if I ever go back to church more regularly, I've been to one church a few times, but it's also like, I am not serving.
Yeah.
No.
And
Listen to this podcast and you want to find out why. But it's like, I cannot just give myself over again willy-nilly, because back then when I was in my mid-20s, I was like, yeah, let's do it. I have nothing else to live for. Like, let me give it all. And there's nothing wrong with that innately, but the burnout and how turned off I am by a lot of other things is just like, man, it wasn't all their fault, trust me.
Yeah.
They played a major role, but there was a lot of other stuff happening where it's like, this is not fun anymore. This is not healthy anymore. And truthfully, it did become a very toxic relationship that had a lot of people involved in it. It's like, this is not what God has ordained, right? Not a fancy word, but like, this is just not a good picture to paint. But we can pretend that everything is fine, and it's not fine.
Yeah. My friend,
and that's the problem. That's the problem.
My friend Jonathan Baum that I mentioned earlier, he has a book out actually called Don't Burn Out, Burn Bright, and it's really good. It's about church burnout, business burnout. He co-wrote it with another guy who's a doctor. I forget his name, but he talks about business side of it. and then Jonathan talks about the church side of it. And his co-author, he said in the book, he's like, it didn't hit me how burned out I was until I was at my grandmother's funeral and I didn't even cry. And I was like, whoa, like you were at a family member's funeral and you are so mentally swamped and taxed by other things that you can't even feel emotions towards your grandmother. Like that's terrible. Like those are the type of things you need to take note of. And there's a suicide rate on pastors, which is insane, but it happens. But yeah, it's way too much pressure for these quote unquote mega church. One show I talk about on here. Have you ever watched Righteous Gemstones?
Oh my gosh, I love that
It
show.
is literally.
That is like the Hollywood version of our childhoods, like to the extreme, right?
Yeah.
But everything in there has so much truth to it.
It does.
It's just very stylized.
Yeah.
But I'm like, holy moly, this is it.
Yeah, it is. It is. It is. It's insane.
Crazy.
It's yeah, there are some parts of it you're like, all right, but like that is almost, I put that with like the Hillsong documentary. Like it's almost like a documentary. It's so true in so many ways, and
it's a really good satire.
It is very good. Very good.
How it looks like blown up.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Adam Devine or Devine. Was that Adam Devine? Is that who it is on that?
Yeah.
He looks just like Carl Lenz. That was hilarious. Yeah, he is great. I love that show. I don't know if they have another season coming out or not, but yeah, I mean, it is what it is. It was an experience, a learning experience. Like I was saying, I'm still experiencing it in my new church, not new church, but my current church I've been serving every week at, and trying to get only thing I have learned is to keep my peace, be less involved, do less, just do less, because the more you do, the more burned out you get. I saw a post the other day by someone. It was like, it said family over ministry. And that's not popular, especially for people who do ministry. Like they're constantly putting their ministry over their family, for financial reasons or whatever. But it's important that your first ministry should be your family. And a lot of pastors like Carl Lenz and other people I've talked about on here, Jeremy Foster, who I think you've are you familiar with him? I think
the last major story I heard was Carl Lenz's, and I have been out of it ever since. So I have just been under a rock.
There's been others that have been caught.
Oh, I'm sure.
That I used to literally go to churches like Journey to see this person preach, and and what, I'm not completely. At first, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe this, but like, at the end of the day, they're human. We're only human, and a lot of the modern day church tries to paint people as if they aren't. And that's one thing they talk about on that documentary, on the Hillsong documentary, is like the people up there did not reflect the church. The people that were on that platform, you look out here, this is not what we are. This is it was not at all, and that's so true. Like a lot of phony baloney. When I stepped out of the worship team, like at our church, and I left, I didn't say I was leaving the church. I said I was stepping down from the worship team, and I kind of painted it like I was gonna get involved with something else, primarily the youth, because they were starting a youth group. And I talked to their youth pastor, who I was surprised they picked. I thought it was going to be someone else that's also been there from the beginning, and I kind of thought would have been a good, I'm talking about, tall guy, Joel. I thought I always looked at him like he would be a great youth pastor, and they, for whatever reason, they didn't choose him. They went with someone else, and whatever.
And maybe that was his and his family's decision. Again, stuff we never know, right? But
you'll never know.
If we could pick,
right,
he would have been great.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that we saw that often. People being like not using the right people, or why are you using this person? But anyways, I'm trying to get involved in youth, and I had a meeting with him, and he was just kind of like, I guess he just thought I wanted to do the worship team for youth, and I'm like, No, I just want to, get involved. I even went to the meeting after service, and he just kind of like big fake smile right in my face. I want to deck him in the face. I mean,
Oh my
he
gosh.
just such a fake ass smile. I just anyone
Yeah.
that does that, there's nothing wrong with smiling, but certain cultures, they look at like that, like you're trying to hide, you're covering something up, and like
Yeah.
you would see that in church often. You see that in business all the time. People fake smile.
Mm-hmm.
I see it at work all the time. It's phony
Mm-hmm.
baloney, and
Yeah.
and it's just like I could just tell like how smug he was. Like there was he had either been told not to put me on on the leadership there or something, because there was like I don't even know what happened. Like I told him I was interested, and he's like, all right, well, you want to go to Ryan, he's a whole other topic. So much was put on him. So much was put on him. And it got to the point where he was like asking for prayer for his mental health. Like he put that in our group chat. Like,
Mm-hmm.
can I get some prayer? Like I'm having some issues, and like, dude, like that didn't lift any burdens. He still was trying to make it happen. I don't know if he left or not. I don't know if that's why they put that post out there about
Maybe.
where, like, I don't know if he's gone now. I have no idea, but all I know is if you got people serving to the point where their like mental health is at, like, I don't know if it has anything to do with them serving or if it has anything that else is I don't know what's going on in their life, in his life or anyone's life, but like just giving people breaks. I think it just all comes back to just not burning
Yeah, they're
people out.
human. We can only
Yeah.
go so far.
Yeah.
And there needs to be a respect
Right.
aspect. Like I know and part of it will be like, yeah, the other argument is like, yeah, if we're feeling a certain way, like we should be able to speak up
Right.
and stand up for ourselves. I'm like, okay, but if you're just in a constant state of serving and you don't know the whirlwind that you're in, it's really hard to speak up for yourself until you show up at a funeral and don't show any emotion, right?
Right.
But it's like we can also take a better step of looking out for each other,
Yeah.
right? Like that shouldn't just be a pastor's job. And that's where I feel like, the church that I went to just for like a service or two, like they have 3 or 4 different pastors like that rotate out, right? Because it is a lot. It's a lot for pastors, teaching pastors, worship leaders. They're giving so much of themselves. And yes, it is their primary job if they're on staff, or even if they're volunteering, they could volunteer 40 hours a week, right? But if we're burnt out, then we're not doing anything to serve the world in which we've been called to serve.
Yeah.
So if we're supposed to model what Jesus did, Jesus took a lot of breaks.
Mm-hmm.
He took a lot of naps. He went by himself. He had some quiet time. He meditated. He did a little kumbaya. And then he came back.
Yeah.
And so if we're supposed to be modeling, like Jesus did not model hustle culture.
No.
Jesus served when he needed to. He was always available. Yet he stood up for himself and said, I need a break.
Yeah.
I have to go back to the source and get recharged.
Yeah.
So if we're following Jesus' example, are we really?
Yeah.
There's so much we can learn just from that of we can't go. I mean, one of my books up here is The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer, because boy, does everyone and their grandmother need to read that.
Mm-hmm.
Because hurrying is not going to get you anywhere. It's going to get you into the grave faster.
Yeah, that's true.
It's going to ruin your mental health, your emotional health, your relationship with friends and family and everyone outside of that. And it's like, we only do this life once.
Right. Right.
This is it.
Yeah.
As much as I would love there to be 99 versions, I'm like, hey, this version is hard enough. I'm good with one.
Yeah.
Like one's enough for me.
Seriously.
I don't need to do this whole live forever thing. I think, yeah, if I could have what the modern church could do better is like take care of your people before you start taking care of the world.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Look within your own walls, see who's struggling, build that accountability, have multiple different kinds of hospitality teams, and then have your hospitality team have a hospitality team, right? Like everybody look after each other.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way that it doesn't crumble.
Yeah, that's true.
But if you just want to put a projection on into the world, then like that says a lot more than just being real about what's happening.
Right.
Which is a disservice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, the biggest travesty to come out of this whole thing, right, was that you and I did not go on the road and start our own music duo. That is the biggest travesty
Right.
of this whole thing. Because we tried for a hot second. We
We
tried to
tried.
record a few things. Like, it
Yeah.
was phenomenal.
It wasn't
No one
bad.
was gonna buy it. Like, not literally, not like we were selling it, but even in the church, like, no one believed that we were serious. But it's like, dang,
Right.
dang,
Yeah.
what a missed thing of. I mean, we should have just done it outside of the church, regardless. But that's the
Yeah.
biggest thing of like,
There's a
man.
there's a group of people that are on the team there now that have a thing called cultivation worship. They started like their own studio project. And do you know Randy Chase? He's that
I
older.
know of him. Yeah.
Okay, he goes there now, and he maybe didn't go there, but he was like, I'm glad that he goes to church at least at all, because he was like a big alcoholic, and he ran the studio, Superior Studios in Cleveland for years and years and years, and um, he goes there, and he would talk to me about the music all the time. I'm like, dude, I don't know what to tell you. Like, we just don't have the people. Like, you're like, you need like more guitars. You need. I'm like, we just don't have it. You play guitar? Like, we have no people. Well, oh God, why did I even bring him up? Crap. I had something there. But he,
It'll come
anyways,
to you.
yeah, man, why did I bring him up? You're talking about, God, I hate when this happens.
I know, me too.
Uh, just the
Well,
whole,
cultivating like heavy, healthy.
okay, cultivation worship, perfect. So
Yeah.
yeah. So that was the team that they started. So he actually records them, and it's this one kid who does lead every now and then, plays guitar. He's got a nice voice, and him and his wife. I know his wife sings, but she's not actually on the team, but she does singing on the studio stuff that they do. He actually asked me to play drums for it originally, and I was unable to do it, so he got Mike to play, which he loves playing. He'll play anytime he can get a chance. But yeah, it's just funny because like but even with that, they get like no likes from anyone on social media except for like me and maybe other couple people. It's like it's like a weird competition that everyone's against each other, but in the same place serving. And I could even say that with like my church growing up, like musically, it was a competition because it felt like in my old school Pentecostal church, it felt like we were all playing over each other as loud as we could, and no one wanted to like let someone stand out. It's almost the same, but just in a different form. Like,
Yeah.
and I think it kind of all goes back to what I say often with even this, the podcasting, a kind of a keeping up with the Joneses mentality. That's what I had to stop doing. Excuse me. I had to stop doing this keeping up with the Joneses mentality with the podcast. I was trying to put out, okay, let me put out, I was putting out an episode every 2 weeks at one point, just pumping out content. Then I'm like, oh my God, I see all these people doing reels, and I'm doing like one reel a month if I'm lucky. I need to do more reels, and I'm making reels. And I got burned out by doing all that. And I didn't get burned out by doing the podcast. I just got burned out by the hustle of it, and the keeping up with the Joneses. And I'm not going to, what am I going to do? I can post a reel a day. It's not going to get, I mean, maybe some algorithm thing might happen and I might hit. It happened to me on TikTok, or with the Aaron Carter thing. I got like a bunch, like 1,000 or whatever likes just from a reel. Well, but I mean, it's just clout chasing. It's not, doesn't do anything. I don't have 1,000 listeners. Like, it's clout chasing, and it's dopamine chasing, and it's essentially the same thing we were doing in church. Is um, it was very self-serving, and that wasn't good. I think that just wasn't good. And I think that's what I've talked with Jonathan Malm again about. Just, you know, church just needs to completely revamp the way that we're doing things, because we've just kind of been doing the same thing in circles over and over. Um, less, less of us, more of God. And I don't even know. It's almost like how do you come back from where we are? You know what I mean? Like I thought, I was kind of hopeful during the pandemic. I thought things were going to come back different, and we came back right doing things exactly the same every church, everywhere, and it was like it didn't feel right. Like this was an opportunity for us to like start anew, and instead we just picked up right where we left off, but with masks on,
Yeah.
and that was it. And like it should have changed. It should have changed things, but I think things just got worse. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
We're recognizing a lot more now,
Right.
being almost 5 years out of COVID, right? Because that was such a shock to our system, our
Yeah.
physical bodies, everything else. And so for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, we're going to have to be in some kind of therapy, whether it is talk therapy or music or art
Yeah.
or whatever.
Instagram. I see so many Instagram pages
Oh, yeah. Oh,
that
yeah.
are
Anything, right?
centered
Because we are
around.
looking for connection because
Yeah.
we lost it severely and we didn't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
It was the first time in modern history that we were right back to most the earliest form of people, right?
Yeah.
And I say form of people, that's not the right phrase. Like not necessarily like beginning of the world Bible people, but to have nothing and to be disconnected from
Yeah.
people, like you go back to way before, you go back even 300 years. You can go back sooner, right? And so that was a shock because we're so used to technology and all of the ways it serves us, and it does serve us in very good ways. We saw that we crumble without it.
Oh, did you?
There's such a dependency.
I,
And so if we can figure out how to live in both, right?
yeah.
Because there were people that never had it, people that grew up with like black and white TVs, and then us, like we grew up figuring out like, okay, I remember dial-up, I remember
Yeah.
VHSs, I remember cassette tapes, right? I did all of that
Yeah.
stuff. And now everything's on my phone, and yay, woohoo, that's great. So we were that weird generation of like, okay, we were not guinea pigs, but we were kind of in the transition of the modernness that we have today. And all of these young people coming up, it's like they grew up so differently than you and I.
Mm-hmm.
It's insane. And so how can the church do better? Great question. I don't have an answer for that, right? It's like I think just being really honest, like I think everyone in church is trying to do a good thing. It's just how we're going about it. The water is a little muddy.
Yeah.
And it's been muddy for a while. And so if you want to keep saying the water's clear when it's actually muddy, then that is a you problem. Let's figure out what is happening to first make the water muddy. And we find the source of where it's coming from. And the truth is like it's just a lot. There's so many factors. It's so hard to really pinpoint one place, one person, one time, one conversation. And it's like, okay, how do we steward our mental health better? How do we steward our physical health better? How do we still enjoy doing what we're doing without that burnout? Because it happens in every other facet of life except church. But when it's happening more in church and in our regular lives outside of it, bing, 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 like we have an issue.
Yeah.
So if we don't personally take assessment and just try to like, okay, what would I change? What can I change about me? If there's something that I need to work on, fix, whatever, then okay, how can I model that if it's something that can be modeled, or if it's just a quiet reflection time that I need to like keep being in, okay, then how does it spill out to other people? And it's all if we want to do it, right? If we are stuck and we are comfortable, God have mercy, right?
Yeah.
Because he sees, he understands
Yeah.
whether this is what his plan was. Like, obviously he saw everything before everything began, but it's like, I doubt this is how he saw or his expectations for everything. Like, he knew we'd get here.
Yeah.
Will we want to get out?
Yeah.
As collectively, right? Because everyone's like, oh, the church. I'm like, yeah, capital C is great. What about lowercase c?
Yeah.
It's all great. Like, it's all great to put that image out. But what happens when everything's broken? Like, you can zoom in, it's great, and then you zoom out, and it's not. It's like, okay, we need to have a little come to Jesus moment of like, what is happening? But at least if we can model what he did, as far as you have your allotted time that you're in front of people, and then you take a break.
Yeah.
Maybe we just need more naps. Let's start with that.
Right. Yeah.
Anything goes after that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it looks to us, it looks like how did we get here? But I don't think, obviously, to God, it's nothing new. I mean, if you look biblically, the church has been always been kind of crazy. I mean, there's been churches that just started worshiping different idols out of nowhere. So it's certainly we're not that far gone. But it to us, what are we doing? We essentially are. I mean, kind of worshiping the worship in a way, and worshiping the model of the modern day church. It's all the same, just in a different package.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
and it's just a different, brave new world, I guess. And I think now more than ever, a lot of what's going on, just because of social media, is being exposed left and right. I see I see so many videos all the time. It's just crazy stuff.
Do you follow Tim Whitaker at the New Evangelicals on Instagram?
Mm, maybe I don't know.
He's up your alley if you don't. He also has a podcast, but he does a lot of video Instagrams of like, here's a clip of something in the news. You know, he's
Okay.
super big on deconstruction, and really just being like, okay, if we are Christians, like, let's look at people who say they are and are not living it. And then
Mm,
he's not shaming, but he's bringing awareness. Like, if this is what we say and this is actually what we're also saying,
yeah.
or we're doing the opposite of, like, we need to have discussions. So he's very good about like, hey, this is what was said. This is not actually biblical.
Okay. I think I might know
And
this
just,
guy. Some
yeah,
of those guys, I gotta be honest with you, they go a little too far with it. There's one guy in
sure.
particular. I'm just like, all right, dude. Like, you woke up on the wrong side of the bed. I don't know. Like sometimes I get where they're coming from, but and people probably say that about me too. Things I've said. I've found myself going against the grain with some of those people on Instagram. I don't know if it's the same guy, but some of them they'll and then you read the comments, and the comments are the worst. Ugh. I need to stop going to the comments. It's just a mess. It's just everyone attacking everyone. And you're a wolf in sheep's clothing. It just goes on and on and on. And it's like, like, it
Just
goes.
scroll on.
Just keep
Scroll
scrolling.
on.
Whatever. If you don't like it, there have been like some news sources that I've had to unfollow because like they'll say, "Oh, we're unbiased news," and it clearly is not. And I'm just like, but instead of commenting, I just unfollow. I'm not gonna sit here. That's one reason why I do this podcast. I'd rather save what my opinions are for this, not to anonymous people on social media. That's gonna go into the internet. Um, I noticed that I was losing some followers because of some comments I made, especially during the pandemic. Um, and I was like, you know what? Let me just save it for the pod. That's what I often say. Save it for the pod. People that listen are gonna listen. People that don't like this, they don't have to listen. So that's how I look at
And
it.
for
Like,
people that have a lot of opinions, you can start your own podcast.
exactly.
Like,
Anyone
go
can do
for
it.
it. Go for it.
It's simple.
Yep.
So
Yeah. I don't even look at comments. I just scroll because I have nothing else to do and I do have
yeah.
other things I can be doing. So I've never gotten on that train of, especially now because you see so many shortened clips or reels or XYZ. It's like, I don't know who to believe. So I'm just going to believe nobody
Yeah.
and just not even tune into it. There
Right.
are convictions that we have regardless of what it is. Election coming out in a couple months, that's going to open
Ugh.
up. It already has opened up the floodgates, and then it's a whole thing. Here's
Ugh.
my hot take, right? I'm like, was oh my gosh, we broke away from England like several hundred years ago. History buffs, do not come at me. I know the date. I can't say it right now.
Seven.
But it's like, was that really all that bad?
Yeah.
Like, was the monarchy really that bad? That's petty and uneducated of me, but that's where I come from. But it's like, okay, we do something in this country for 4 years, and then someone else becomes president, and then the first 2 years they're undoing everything that the first guy built in 4, and then we're having to put our stuff in for those latter 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Hope to God all of your campaigning got you another 4 years. You can do the stuff you wanted to do. Like, are we changing it too much? Are we just having political whiplash
Mm-hmm.
of things being changed from one side to the other when really there has to be a third choice, or just get rid of everybody.
Right.
That's my hot take, right? And I know nothing about politics. I choose not to be in that world.
Yeah.
I know some people live on it. Good for you. That's just a world that does not make sense to me.
Yeah.
Talk about performing, right? And so it's like, okay.
It's the WWE of, that's what I constantly call the modern day church. It's the WWE. It's just like politics of church. It's essentially, you got church, and then you got the mega church, and it's all entertainment based. It's the same as wrestling. I hate to say it, because wrestling at an amateur level is more legit than professional wrestling. So it's just, yeah, it's just American politics is the worst. It really is. It's other. I have my some people from other countries on here sometimes, and they just laugh their ass off at us. Like, dude, this is insane. Oops, I just unplugged myself.
Yeah.
But it's I actually did, believe it or not, a couple episodes ago, obviously because of what happened in July, I talked about, you know, what happened with Trump in the assassination attempt, but that was probably the most political I ever have gotten on this show, because I really wanted to be. I feel me personally, I feel very middle of the road, like, especially right now. Like, I can't take either side. It's just, and it's all you see right now. You're better off not even going on social media until November's over, until next year, because it's all you see. It's so nauseating. Ugh.
And I think why a lot of people do comment in the comment section or make their own reaction videos is that we're all trying to process this in real time.
Right.
We all have context based on what social media and news outlets, biased or not, are giving us. Yeah. So we are all collectively just trying to outwardly process, and then our processing, other people get offended because all of our political views are shaped by what spiritual or non-spiritual upbringing we had.
Yeah.
And so then, as us, right, like, we came from the writer side, not the writer side. I'm sorry, we came from the right side of politics. I'm not saying it's better. I'm just saying that's where we came from. And so
you say the writer side or the whiter side? Sorry.
Or something like that. So then you come to your own and, like, right, like, we're in our 30s now, like, we've lived some life. We're a little bit more, like, we're not kids anymore, but we're not, I don't know. I don't feel like a grown up yet. I don't know about you, but it's like, I don't want to grow up because there's things like politics, right? Not that I live in a fairy tale, but it's just like, it is so hard to understand and to navigate and to just be, I think, well educated. Like, there are places that are doing a fabulous job, but it's like, it's just so inundated with junk that it's really hard to know what is what, because everyone promises you what you want to hear. It's like, great, what are you going to do about it?
Yep.
Like, actually do. And I know that one person has a team and the team does things and that's just how it works. But it's like, man, how do you make a right decision? So I haven't followed anything because for my mental health, I know I can't take it. Yeah. I can't. And so when it comes, I will trust in that decision when the day comes. But it's like, everyone's talk about united, like, we're just the divided states of America. We've been that way for a while. Right.
It's sad. It really is.
It's horrible.
I talked about that. So much politically has happened. Like, it's almost like every day something new comes out. But I talked about that a couple episodes ago about just even that first debate. I know everything's changed since then, but, like, just the lack of civility. Like, I know there was a video that went viral of, like, Obama and Mitt Romney actually shaking hands before the debate, stuff like that. I noticed that right away. No shaking hands. There was no civility at all. No one could. It was just so sad to see that it was just like two old men bickering.
And you're stepping into the most prestigious job in the country, and yet you are taking the time allotted to you on the air just to bash the other person.
Right.
That shows more of who you are. And, like, I want to hear what you're going to do.
Right.
And granted, what you're going to do is nuanced too, because it's not as black and white. It's like, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. Like, it's so hard, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, oh my gosh, if those candidates are not, at that time, if they're not showing civility, humility, that's a lot to ask. If they're just not being kind, then they're not going to lead that country in the things that they're not being led in themselves.
And I think it reflects the way the world is. I mean, the president is reflective of the country, and we'll look at the country. People aren't like that anymore. People, I couldn't tell you last time. I hate to be so negative, but like, I couldn't tell you the last time someone's been like said thank you. Like if I hold a door open for someone, or like really, like I hate that. Or like you get off an elevator, right? Something as simple as that. You get off an elevator, person forces themselves on before they let you off. Like little things like that. I notice stuff
Yeah.
like that. Like whatever
Yeah.
happened to just basic human courtesy of other people, you know? It's just ugh. And I play a lot of videos. I'll spare you the videos. I normally end with a bunch of like crazy videos. I'll spare you. I just crazy police videos, you know, of like body cam videos of people just like going berserk, and it's just like what is wrong with the world, you know? It's sick. The world is
Yeah.
sick. It needs
It's always been that way. There are
Yeah.
still good people doing very good things.
Yeah.
And there are people that we need to question what they're doing because it might not be the greatest, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so I think anything like I'll take that tie-in from the whole church talk of like take care of yourself.
Yeah. Yep.
Really and truly. Like that's really easy for some and harder for others, but it's like you know what you can handle. Election years are different than every other year, right?
Yeah.
We had election year and Olympics in the same year. Like how lucky are we? We're just like there's so much going on, right? And so we can't handle it all because we weren't made to.
Hmm.
We're just not. And so with this one life to live, take care of it knowing that yeah, the time that we spend scrolling for police videos is not going to give us a great look of the view of the world, even though there are police forces that are doing very good things. We just hear about the bad ones
Right.
all the time.
Right.
And it's like, okay, just shut that off. Shut it off.
Yeah.
It's not going to do you any good. There was one time on Facebook, I'm not on TikTok, but I was on Facebook, and I got sucked into like an hour and a half of body cam videos. And I was like, this is not what I look at. What is actually happening? I had to like throw my phone across the room and leave it for a week. I was just like, this is not good.
Yeah.
But
Doom
it's so easy
scrolling.
to just get like sucked into it.
Yeah.
But it's like, I have other things to do with my time and I just can't. I can't do it.
Yeah, I going back to like kids, like I don't know how kids today are doing. I think honestly, growing up with it, maybe they're like my co-host Tim, his son, like he's like 15, 16, but he plays guitar and stuff. I'm like, dude, it's a miracle that he plays guitar like you, because kids today, I feel like are but maybe they're not. Maybe they are gravitating towards more tangible things because they grew up with the internet and they're like, okay, I could put this away and actually, I don't know. I know gaming's a big thing. It's almost close to, you know, internet. The gaming's huge, but
Sure.
like you see more kids into gaming and stuff and less obsessed with their phone. I don't know. Maybe it is because we kind of grew up with all these different steps of technology, and now we're here, and it's just crazy. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's just it's
We'll have
the
to have
reality.
another episode to figure out
Right.
how we fix the world. Now we've talked about the problems. Now we'll fix it.
Exactly. We'll solve all the problems.
Yeah, I think we always had connection issues like pre-COVID, and I think again, COVID with a lot of things has brought light to a lot of it. And I think regardless of if we're posting a comment on social media, if we're doing whatever, like we are looking for connection. And I don't know if we know healthy ways yet, really, to implement to do that. Like we know, we know.
Yeah.
But we are just so bombarded with everything at our fingertips. We had the world shut down almost 5 years ago. We had absolutely no flipping clue what was happening. And we are just affected by that. Like mental health professionals everywhere, it's like we will be dealing with the aftermaths of this for the rest of our lives and future generations. Like kind of like the ones that, right? Like we were kids when 9/11 happened.
Yeah.
And someone that I work with, she is, I think, just graduated high school. Like one of their classes was like literally just talking about 9/11 and teaching these kids 9/11 because they were not born yet.
Right. Right.
And so it's like there's that generation, right? So it's like leading up to COVID, and then we have, you know, the generations that came after 9/11, and it's like after every major thing, we're still looking for connection. We're
Yeah.
humans. That's what we were made for. And we just go about it through technology. But what I think we really, really, really want is interpersonal human connection.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
We are there.
Yeah.
We will get there.
That's true.
We'll be better, hopefully, those who want to. Yeah, I mean, having a good conversation with someone is way better than like scrolling for an hour being like, I'm never getting that time back.
Right. That's so true.
Right. So it will happen. I am hopeful because I have to be. But it can happen. Like if we're desperate enough to do that, then I think we will see that happen.
Yeah.
And so podcasts are a great way to talk about that, right?
It
We
is.
said in the beginning, like there's different podcasts for every person alive.
Yeah.
Whether you start your own, go for it, do it. If you just like listening to a whole bunch of them, do it. But this is how we express what we need to.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, look at us. We're not playing, you're still playing music, but it's like how cool that we both have a platform that's allowing us to tell the stories that we want to tell. I'm so grateful to be a podcaster because I'm finally able to use my voice and not feel squished or scared too. It's like, no, this is the time. We have things to say.
Yeah.
And we're hopefully, I don't know if we're changing lives, but we might help people to think a certain way or have a laugh or roll their eyes, whatever.
Anything at all.
Anything is good. A reaction is good. No matter
I think
what.
about that. I think about people. There are people who have no one to talk to. Some people, there are lonely people out there that probably listen to this, and this is their, it's like you're hanging out with people. That's one thing that I loved about podcasts when I started. I've only been listening to podcasts a couple of years, and it just kind of just happened. I'm like, let's do this. But yeah, I know we've been on for a while now, and I'm sure you have things to get to for the rest of the day. But yeah, I appreciate you coming on and.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad.
Yeah, this was awesome. We finally got
it out, right? It happens when it happens.
Right, it worked out. It really did. I had a bunch of doctor's appointments today, so I was like, I took the day off. I prefer to do these in the evening. During the day, I get like a lot of sun coming in here. I was trying to balance it out with some lighting, but at night it looks a lot better. But definitely would love to have you on again sometime. We could talk further or whatever. We can talk about whatever. But yeah, this was awesome. I'm glad we finally got it to happen. And do you want to plug anything for?
Oh gosh, yeah. So my podcast
ahead.
is called Your Story Matters. I am on Amazon and Apple and Spotify, wherever you listen. My website is michaelaelizabeth.com. So you can go on there and kind of find everything. Like I said earlier, I'm an Enneagram coach. If you don't know what that is, head on over and I can definitely show you. So yeah, that's been really fun and a huge transition in life as well. But that's a thing, like no matter what happens, like we're always creating and reinventing ourselves and evolving. So that's been really fun to do. Like there is life outside of the thing you always thought that you were supposed to do. Because we were never supposed to like retire in church together, right? Like that was not the goal, but we're able to do all of these creative things outside of it. And so that's been really healthy and helping us get back on track to the humans that we have been and the whatever else that we're going to do with our lives. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Awesome. I love it. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on, and I will talk to you soon, my friend. It was good seeing you. All right.
You
Bye.
too.
All right, and that was my friend Michaela. That was a long time coming, and we finally got it to happen, so that was fun. I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. I have to take a pee. That was a long one. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and just peace out of here. Pretty much got everything I wanted to talk about at the beginning of this episode out there out in the open. So yeah, I will talk to you guys soon. Later. Hey, thanks again for joining us on Your Drive Home podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the show. And also don't forget to follow us on all of our social medias. We will talk to you guys soon. Until then, drive safe.